Once somebody gets informed that exists a concept named BIM, even by chance, as the way it happened with us, it is inevitable not to be interested to search its exact definition and learn the most about it. So, in an effort to concentrate the information about BIM, we have made our own blog in which you can find everything that is related to our search. The first step was a definition search through internet, through websites and articles. Approaching its definitions occurs that BIM is closely related to 3D modeling, and the question is, for someone who wants to do BIM, is it necessary to get familiar with a whole new group of BIM software, or BIM can be done with the programs that somebody already knows and uses? Obviously, there are a lot of programs related to BIM, such as ARIS, the first program for BIM, Tekla BIM Site, Rhino, Allplan Architecture, but the most important battle goes on between ArchiCAD and Revit Architecture, and which one of the two is the most effective BIM tool. Actually, for Revit there are a lot of blogs giving info, such as revit.blogspot.com and the Revit Kit. Getting more and more familiar with the theory of BIM through books and articles, you can find the bibliography in our blog too, and case studies of existing buildings. We try to form how present BIM looks like. It became clear the close relation of BIM with parametric design and sustainability, for example, green BIM, and how BIM can affect the current construction field and the relationships between architects, engineers, constructors, and clients. The amount of associations that have to do with BIM is really big too. The American Institute of Architects, with Technology in Architectural Practice, and Hawks Building Smart Community, for example. So, in order to really work with BIM, the next step done was to use Revit Architecture, starting with tutorials of the program and online classes that can be found in Revit website and Autodesk University's website. Even though the experience of using Revit was very helpful for understanding that BIM helps simplify the architecture process, it eliminates the waste of time in every step of the construction of a building, and that with it, elements with real substance can be designed. Still, Revit is not BIM. But it kept being clear that each program is not BIM itself, and the software used is irrelevant to the final result and the level of achieving BIM. So we assumed that the founders of the concept are those who, through their way of working, have categorized it or evolutioned it towards different directions. The leadership of BIM in America consists of Kim Ononuma with Onuma Incorporation, Finis Jerningham with Design Atlantic, Chuck Eastman, the writer of BIM Handbook, and Jerry Lazarin, who actually helped in the naming of BIM. As for Europe, there are associations such as Eurostep and International Alliance for Interoperability called Building Smart. Finis Jerningham with Big BIM Little BIM and Kim Ononuma with Onuma Planning System were willing to provide us their experience through online interviews. Later in this video, you would be able to see the more important parts of these two interviews, in which they answer in a questionnaire made by us and keep describing their way of thinking about BIM. Through these interviews, we understood that the basic idea of BIM, which is interoperability, is fundamental not only during the designing process, but at its every aspect, because BIM is not only a data exchange, but a different state of mind. But the question still to be answered is it really as ideal as it seems?
My name's Fineth Jernigan. I'm author of Big BIM, Little BIM, and I guess today we'll be answering some of the questions that have been provided, just to get a little background on BIM and where BIM is going.
My background, I'm an architect. I'm involved very much with the American Institute of Architects Technology and Architectural Practice Committee, and also involved with the Building Smart group, international group for open standards, which is the National Institute of Building Sciences in the U.S. And our company, we are architects, but we're also software developers.
To me, BIM is a collaborative process that helps people make better decisions. It's not about software, it's actually not about any technology. It's much more about people and processes than it is about anything to deal with software. This is really about how people work and how they process information to make better decisions. What I consider to be the first principles of BIM are these 7 items.
What is the exact definition of BIM for you? As you see, we have a kind of a non-traditional view of BIM. A lot of people think of BIM as a way, and there's a term being used by some people here in the building industry. There's a term called selfish BIM. Selfish BIM is BIM that's used only for your purpose, for doing construction documents faster, or for reducing the cost of construction. All very important stuff, but it's not about collaborating again. For us, BIM is about collaborating, being able to communicate ideas. And BIM does not have to be a 3D model like I explained earlier, as long as you have structured information. If you have information that you're collecting, you can put it even in an Excel file and say, here are the spaces, here is the condition of the spaces, here how much energy is using in each space. So that's a BIM to us. We don't like to narrow it down and say BIM is only this. The worst thing that's out there is a lot of people think of BIM as being a software. Oh, BIM is Revit. No, BIM is not Revit. Revit is one of the BIM tools. ArchiCAD is one of the BIM tools. Navisworks is one of the BIM tools. But BIM is a process. It's not just the tools. So we actually developed this simplified format. It's called BIM XML. It's a technology term, but I want to explain the concept first. If I have a 3-dimensional object, whether it's a chair or a building, it could be a beautiful 3D model, right? But associated with that model is information. I am this size, I have this color fabric, I have this cost, etc. So you can have a lot of information attached to the 3D object, and that's basically what building information modeling is about. But it can also just be a simple dot. It could be a dot saying, I am a chair, this is my size, this is my color, this is my cost. Or the same thing with the entire room. It could be a very detailed 3D model room, or it could be a dot with the same data about it. And on and on. And the whole thing works throughout the whole scale of the world to the site, to the building, to the floor, to the room, to the single object. So the U.S. Coast Guard, one of our clients who we work with, said this: the data about our facilities is more valuable than the physical facility itself. That's a very profound statement, because essentially what they're saying is the physical building itself is less valuable than the information about the building over the life cycle. Over 50 years, 75 years, 100 years, the information about the building is more valuable than the building.
The one tool versus many question comes up a lot. Many times this also becomes a question of one model versus many models. The reality is that from my perspective, I want to be able to use any tool I want. I believe it's impossible to create a single tool that will actually work within BIM, because BIM is so big. Any company that tries to create a tool that will do everything creates a tool that is so complex that it limits its use to a relatively small group of people. There is no one tool that's good at everything. Many different tools working at many different levels of detail at the same time are really what make this happen.
This is the ONUMA system. It's a BIM tool, building information modeling tool. It's in the cloud. The cloud is the internet, and just like a lot of the tools, like Facebook is in the cloud, for example. Being on the internet in the cloud means that you don't install any software to start working with it. You basically log into whatever device you're using and start working with the graphics and the data and the plans and the city models and the building models and the floor plans. And it's a model server, which is also a very important concept. We're not taking a model and uploading it and storing a file. It's finding information that only the information that you need and finding it in real time without having to download an entire file. That's a critical concept here, and that's why what we do is a little bit different than what other BIM and CAD tools are. And not to say either way is good or bad, it's just that this technology now enables things that would not have been possible at all years ago. So the ONUMA system is also very much about GIS, Geographic Information System, in other words, location, and building information modeling. So in a traditional CAD or a BIM file, you have the origin of the building, which is 0, 0 at the lower left corner of the building. But most CAD or BIM files do not know the latitude or longitude. They don't exist in space. They don't exist in anywhere in the world. GIS lets you do that. Everything has a latitude and longitude. And this is an absolutely critical part of the process, I believe, because any discussion we have about energy and sustainability and weather and location and appropriate materials for a certain location cannot be done without knowing where your building is. Everything has to have a location. So by default, everything that we put into our system, even the chair, knows the latitude and longitude of where it's located. So BIM storms have been going on for years. We took the process that we do on our real projects and we opened it up and shared it with the industry. And BIM storms are a design charrette, essentially, but using modern technology. So this is a view of the BIM storm in Los Angeles, where we had 130 teams from around the world collaborating in 24 hours to design over 400 buildings. This is Penn State involved, and their task here was to do constructability and cost estimating on the buildings that others were designing. And in BIM storms, you can get into very detailed studies. Even in a 24-hour period, you can go very far with decisions, especially when there's a lot of people collaborating. This is a non-linear process. In BIM storm, it's swirling around. There is no beginning and end. It's all happening at the same time, and therefore you can interact, you can collaborate. This is the part about collaboration I think that's critical. BIM storms fostered different ways to collaborate. So in one BIM storm, this is one of almost 30 BIM storms right now. It's 24 hours, 130 teams, 420 buildings, 2.8 million pages of documents that were never printed. In other words, we did not print the output. We made decisions. You don't go to the internet and print out every website that you go that's available.
The largest component of training for BIM is actually getting people to where they understand the basic concepts behind this. You have to know when Revit is appropriate, or when ArchiCAD would be a better choice, or when the ONUMA system is the best choice, or when you really need to use Ecotech or other things. So that intelligence about how software relates to each other, the jobs they can do, the power that they have, their faults and their benefits, is really what's most critical to training for BIM. You not only have to learn how to use the tool, you have to learn the concepts behind the tool. Okay, lifecycle tools, talked about this some. I believe the ONUMA system is the closest to the goal of managing data for life. Though it is possible, as I mentioned earlier, with ArchiCAD and GIS and a couple of other things, to do a similar kind of operation. The ONUMA system has one of the first publicly available model servers. Now it's a very limited capability model server, but it has a model server in the middle that allows the data to stay alive all the time and allows people to connect to it. The problem with most of the systems, if you think about it from a data standpoint, is they save it to some format. Once it's saved to that format, the data begins to do what we call data rot. It starts to go bad. It loses its life. It becomes a static thing. And in the world of BIM, only live information has value.
Life cycle applications that are able to predict the state of construction accurately through time. Yes, there are. Navisworks does it. basically, in BIM, you can attach time to anything, including in our tool. We actually do that even in our Luna system. We do a construction end and start and end date, or demolition date, and then you can see it as you move the time scale over.
My 95% of the work I do is existing buildings and always has been. Every building that I've ever done, with only maybe 2 exceptions, and I've probably done several thousand, but I've done several hundred in BIM, or have been existing buildings. My entire design portfolio is pretty much existing buildings. One of the things we created, one of the early things I created when I started Design Atlantic, was a process called Foresight Systems. Well, Foresight Systems is based around what we call validation of a project. So it's built around pre-design validation of what the project could be. BIM is really the big picture of working with information in the built environment. Integrated project delivery really is a method for delivery. And because of that, you can use integrated project delivery to implement BIM. It's like BIM is just one of the methodologies for doing a small part of BIM. Have relationships changed? And there's no question that relationships have changed. BIM is requiring that as an industry we move from cooperating to collaborating. Now architects are having to learn how to collaborate. They're having to learn how to be conductors of the orchestra, not the leader of the pack. They're having to learn how to admit to an error, to use the model and risk that the model is going to show that their design won't work, and then risk others helping them make it work. They have to collaborate. They have to share. And they have to network with other people. They have to be collaborative leaders, not dictatorial leaders. The architect can no longer be seen as either the enemy or as the dictatorial leader. And by everybody collaborating, what happens is if you work with all the other people in the process, you find the mistakes before they're put into concrete, or the steel is in place, or the mechanical system is done, or the drywall is taped, or the painting is finished.
Then it includes any risks. Not understanding how to use the tools correctly, maybe misreading the information that you're getting from it, or maybe thinking that the technology is going to answer everything. You still have to, there's a human factor to all of this. You have to bring people in to collaborate, to look at what they're seeing in BIM and then make decisions. The risk is thinking that something's going to happen automatically. So yes, there are certain things that happen automatically, but there are other things that you need to bring people in to make decisions.
Future of BIM. There will be, I believe, a system of distributed model servers, much like you would see a distributed system from a power company. Big data right now is the big thing, because if you've got data, you can do analysis. If you've got data, you can use it for decision making. The complexity will happen behind the scenes. We won't even know what's happening, but it'll be there. People and individual mastery, I think, are going to be much more important than anything else. This is the change in conceptual changes that have happened in the last 4 years. We've moved from a focus on process and integration and projects to a focus on information and people.
The future of BIM. I think it's rapidly changing in the last couple of years. I think there's an incredible future in BIM-related data in this connected world, and with these smartphones and location information. If you think about location on a map, extend that into a building. Imagine if you could walk into a building and get data about everything around you. When was this particular piece of equipment put in? What are the replacement on? What else can you replace it with, etc.